Hello everyone, and today I'll be showcasing my Dino D-Day class tier list. Now, keep in mind that this is my own subjective opinion and should only be regarded as such. Anyhow, without further ado, let us begin. Right, so coming at the very bottom of the list is the Styracosaurus. Now, the Styracosaurus is by far the worst playable character in the game. I mean, quite simply. But first, let me explain how he works. So, firstly, the Styracosaurus is completely improportionate to how he really is in in real fossils. But that aside, he's very slow and ginormous, and he has a very large like tank or like grenade launcher on his back. So, as you control him, you're very slow. You're pretty much just a tank because you have like 25,000 HP or something like that, and you're only I believe you're only in one map, in one game mode objective, and at the very end. So not really that big of a deal of a character. However, the main fault is the aiming of this character. If it weren't for the terrible aiming, this honestly would probably be one of the best dinosaurs because of its extreme damage and HP. But because of that, the aiming mechanics is it's so finicky and horrible, and just it feels like an arcade game rather than a proper Steam game. I don't know what they were thinking when they thought that this would be a good system to implement, but yet here we are. Aside from that, there's really nothing else to write home about. I mean, all there is to do is just to walk to the end of the map. There is no means of healing. I don't think medics can heal him, and unlike a T-Rex, which you'll see later on in the video, he doesn't have any eating animation or anything to be able to heal up. So, he's just he's not really like good in that regard. So, I mean, that's it. I mean, like he's the worst dinosaur in the game. So there's nothing else really to say. All right. Next, and following not so far behind, is Jacob. Now, Jacob, well, again, I'll outline his, so firstly, as his primary weapon, he has the bar, or the BAR, and it is a decent weapon, to say the very least, I guess. It does decent damage. Its TTK is reasonably short. However, the main problem is with it, and this is actually the main problem with Jacob as a whole, is the ammo capacity. The magazine only holds 20 bullets. Now this is crippling for Jacob because, well, in my gameplay, as I'm sure you can see, it takes around 13 bullets to end someone. So you're left with 7 bullets. Now you're in a conundrum, because if there is any more than one person or one enemy, you are screwed, because you have to reload before you can even dream of dispatching of the other one, and you'll just be left you're reloading constantly. And in my experience with this character, most of the times that you die are because you're reloading. So reloading constantly, and the damage, like most of the fully automatic weapons do around the same damage. So the ammo capacity is extremely low, and you're reloading constantly, and you're going to die as a result of that. Now what else? Well, he does have a secondary. And the secondary, initially when I started using it, I thought it was kind of hot garbage, but the more that I use it, I realized it does have its uses. So from the description, it says that you have to be up and close for it to do some real damage, and they weren't joking. You have to be like right in their face for it to actually do any favors for you. But let's say you've done that. So yeah, and then the secondary is powerful, but the problem is, once again, is that it's the low capacity. It's a single shot, which wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but again, if there's more than one, which is very common in this game for enemies to be grouped up, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do. So, all in all, Jacob's main problem is his lack of ammo, and he doesn't have any special ability or anything, and that's also, I guess, another qualm with him, but I suppose that's it to say. I mean, he's kind of uninteresting, both as a character and also gameplay-wise. Alright, next up we have Trigger. Now, Trigger is, well, a very simple dinosaur. So, Trigger is a small dinosaur all he has is a power, I guess, or is he has a machine, like a Browning machine gun mounted to his back. That is literally it. Now, this machine gun does have a cooling, like an overheating mechanic. The only other means of attack that this dinosaur has is if you alt fire or right click, you can headbutt, and that's it. That's all you can do. So, he's quite slow. He's not particularly fast, and the overheating actually happens like very fast, and that's the main problem with him. He overheats very fast, so you just kind of left defenseless. So you might be able to get 1 or even 2 kills, but if you engage any more than that, then you're toast. So, I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about him, really. Alright, next up we have Stygimoloch. Now, the Stygimoloch is, gameplay-wise, almost exactly the same as the Trigger. As far as I'm aware, it has almost the exact same stats, same damage, and same kind of gameplay philosophy, I guess. So, they both have overheating machine guns that overheat way too quick, and the only reason why Stygimoloch is slightly higher than Trigger, I mean slightly, is he might have a smaller hitbox, so he might be harder to hit from afar. That is really the only thing that makes him slightly below Trigger. Other than that, still, it's kind of D tier kind of dinosaur. So that's all that can be said about Stygimoloch. Alright, now sealing off D tier and moving on to the next, we have Desmatosuchus. Desmatosuchus is, I would say, just barely escaped D tier. He's like a tank. He's like a he's kind of like a mini Styracosaurus, but more useful actually. So he's very flat and low down, and his hitbox is quite wide because there's some like side horns side horns that actually can block you from doorways and stuff. So he's quite large and slow, and he has a decently hard hitting like I think 35 millimeter gun on his back, and this can do like some really decent damage up close. So there's that. He can also keep in mind that with this character, weirdly enough, his melee, like his actual melee, is like to the left of him, I noticed. So there's that to consider as well. But so that's his 2 main methods of attack. Now, the main problems with him and why he's in C tier is he's very slow. He's extremely slow. And typically kind of like tank characters of this caliber in other video games and just, you know, in gaming in general, you would expect him to have more HP because of their slowness and their damage output. This is simply untrue for the Desmatosuchus. He has only 100 HP, and I think he has like, I mean, I'm not sure off the top of my head how much armor he has, but it's not a lot. So it's mainly like you're very slowly dredging your way on through to the front lines, and maybe you'll get a kill if you're lucky along the way. Another kill maybe once you're at the front lines, but then you die because it's you're just a sitting duck. You're like especially easy to be taken out at long range. This dinosaur does not have any long range capabilities whatsoever, or any evasive maneuvers to be able to perform because it's so slow. So, and then you respawn and you slowly make your way through to the front lines once again. You can't even jump as this character, so he's quite slow, and to be honest, he's kind of boring, but he does some great damage up close, and he can lock down certain control points or something if that's your kind of fancy, but definitely better options out there. Right, now, sealing off C tier quite abruptly is Joe. Joe, the Tommy gun wielder. Well, he's a typical human, and so yeah. But what can you do? So he has a Tommy gun, decent SMG. I'd say it's around the middle of the pack, you know, in terms of fully automatic weapons. So you certainly can get some kills. Certainly is better ammo capacity than our previous human. So there, I mean, there's that to celebrate. A secondary, Colt, good, good for backup if you run out of ammo and you're in a sticky situation, and his special ability. So his ability is to be able to call artillery into anywhere on a 3D plane. Now this is useful if, of course, you can actually land it. How often this happens, however, is almost next to none, because the delay is so incredibly sparse, or the disparity between setting it up and then actually for it to land is so long that all the enemies that would have been there or were there have already cleared off by now. So really the only way to be able to get kills with the artillery is to predict or like call artillery on choke points on the map. But even still, there's a level of inconsistency and luck that you would need for at least like two people to be there for it to like being worth it in the first place. So the artillery is actually extremely weak because of that, because the delay is just so incredibly long. So I mean, other than that, he's just kind of an average human then, so he's a little bit below average. Starting off with B tier is the Dilophosaurus. Now, this might be a controversial opinion because I know some hold this Dilophosaurus very dearly, but I find it to be a very middle of the road experience. Maybe with some subsequent improvements to the game, he'd be higher up, because it seems like a lot of it comes from shoddy game design, or not even game design, but gameplay. So maybe that could be fixed, but as it is, allow me to elaborate. So firstly, the Dilophosaurus is very large, like disproportionately large to how he actually is in real life. So there's that to consider, and this is especially apparent when you're trying to fit through doorways and such, and tight corners and narrow hallways and such. It is sometimes you can't even go through some doorways, and most of the time it's just extremely awkward. This is not helped by the fact that you are in third person. Now, as I'm sure I've said so far, third person cameras, or a third person camera in this game it's even though you can look around corners without needing to actually physically put your body outside of safety, you are still, in my opinion, heavily disadvantaged because of the movement and also the aim. The movement and the aim is just especially crippled in third person. So what can a Dilophosaurus do? Well, he can do a basic claw attack, and yeah, that does a decent amount of damage. If you sprint up to an enemy and you attack, you can knock them over, and they'll be on the floor then. So after that, you can pick them up with right click if you look at them, with your crosshair. So then you pick them up. Now they're in your mouth, and you have to throw them in 5 seconds. And if you throw them into another person, you get a double kill. This can be very useful, and I imagine it could probably come clutch in some scenarios. But what I find most of the time is that, once again, people are very grouped up in this game. So finding an opportunity such as that, you might be able to knock someone over, but you're stuck in the animation picking them up, and then you have to look at, like, by the time that you can actually are ready to throw it, you're probably dead at that point, because the Dilophosaurus is actually surprisingly not that beefy. So, well, he also makes use of goats in the map. He can just simply pick up goats, and these goats do not have a timer to die, so you can just hold them in your mouth. But the caveat to this is the goats. I mean, you don't have any form of attack until you throw the goat. So if someone's extremely close to you or something, you're practically defenseless, because whenever you throw the goat, they can very easily move around you. So then you'll just be tanking hits, which is not good for this dinosaur. Another ailment, I suppose, with this dinosaur is, once again, the third person camera. When you're throwing either a goat or a person, you can't, the aiming is just off because it's in third person. It's always going to be like to the left and like above you, so you always have to compensate for that, because the crosshair isn't necessarily always accurate. That is also very annoying. And also you can't pick up Trigger or any of the dinosaurs as a lot. You can only pick up humans or goats, so that's also something to consider. So if the entire team is Triggers, which is very unlikely, then you're practically useless. So there's also that to consider. I imagine if you get extremely good with this dinosaur, you can do some serious damage and you can get some crazy kills. So for example, you might be able to knock over a lone human and pick them up. And then there's a large group of people coming up, and if you time it right and you throw the person, you could probably get like 3 kills, and that'd be huge. So yeah, I imagine with enough skill, this dinosaur might actually be a little bit higher tier, but the way that it is, I don't think it's particularly worth it to invest the time going for this dinosaur. But that's just my 2 cents. Right, so next up is Nigel. Now, Nigel, well, firstly, he's a human, so you can expect all human things from him. Let's just jump right into it. So, Nigel, for his primary, has a shotgun, and this can do some mean damage up close. Once again, you have to be up close, like the secondary of Jacob, but you have to be up and close to be able to, actually properly do damage, as you would expect from a shotgun in games. So, yeah, he does good damage, and he has a Piat, or a rocket launcher, as a secondary. It is single fire. Once again, it does good damage. I mainly see it in games used to counter the T-Rex or other huge dinosaur like the Styracosaurus, because it does a lot of damage and you don't necessarily be too close to him. He can also switch out his secondary for a flamethrower. The flamethrower doesn't actually do a lot of damage, like I'm pretty sure it doesn't have any afterburn or anything. So you just have to keep on holding down until they die. But this is extremely good for hard to hit small dinosaurs like the Compy or the Microraptor or other small dinosaurs that are really annoying to hit with an actually properly aimed gun. So that can be good for your team, and that's actually quite good in Last Stand, but that's not what we're discussing. So now the main problem with Nigel is, as I'm sure you can anticipate from his loadout, is he's a very noobish character. I mean, all his weapons don't have any particularly high skill ceilings. I mean, there's only so much you can do with a shotgun. I mean, I really only see his utility when you're just starting out in shooters in general, because even if you have any experience in shooters beforehand, he's not even that good of a choice. So he's really only good if Dino D-Day is one of your first shooters and you're just getting into it, and also if the enemy team has a lot of very small annoying dinosaurs to deal with. So then the flamethrower might also come in handy. But aside from that, he doesn't have any skills to master anything. So he's just kind of boring, and also he's British, but that's besides the point. Anyhow, overall, fun enough when you're starting out, but really you should pick someone else after you become familiar enough in this game. Right, so next up is Striker. I think that's his name. So Striker is, like, once again, a human. He doesn't have any special powers. His only power being, I guess, is that he has 2 primary weapons. Or, well, you wouldn't exactly call the MP40 that he has as a secondary like a primary, because it is not actually considered a primary in this game, but typically in video games it is considered a primary. So there's that. Anyway, what does he have? Well, he has a Kar98K, and like I've already said before, he has an MP40. Aside from that, there's nothing else that he has. I mean, he has a steel hand grenade and a knife, but I mean, that's to be expected with everyone. So the main qualms I have with him is, firstly, his Kar98K can do a lot of mean damage, especially if he can hit your headshots. Like, don't get me wrong, like, this character, like, B tier is not a bad spot. If you hit your shots with the Kar98K, you can do some serious damage. Same goes for the MP40 in close quarter situations. I mean, you can just unload that thing, and so that's also very useful. The main problem is it seems like the iron sights on the Kar98K is not very reliable. It feels as though sometimes I could have my iron sights right on the enemy's head and for it just not register. So that's quite annoying. That's pretty much my main issue, because most of the time you're going to be dealing damage with it with your Kar98, and you could get a body shot which will pretty much wipe out most of the enemy's HP and finish him off with the MP40, and that's a very good strategy. I mean, aside from that, there's nothing really else to say about him. I mean, if you hit your shots with the Kar98K, I mean, you can do some serious damage, but if you want to do that, you should probably just go for, I think his name is Hissman. So, I mean, that's all there is to say about him. Right, so next up is Camille. or Camille, I don't know. So she is a medic, so she heals her allies with her med kits, and that's pretty much her main use. She has a stun gun. This stun gun does pretty low damage, and it's 32 rounds, so you can unload it, but still it's pretty low damage. She has a Walther as her secondary, also low damage, and that's pretty much it. She has a special which I don't believe heals armor, only HP. So you just press, I think you press E on somebody and you begin healing them. That's once you fill up, the special fills up. So that's cool, I guess, but you're mainly healing people with medkits because you can heal more than one person and yourself with the medkits. Now, the reason, she's at the top of B tier, which is pretty good, but why is she so much worse than the Axis medic? Well, it's because her weapon is quite weak. It does not do very good damage at all. And that's pretty much all it boils down to. She is a good medic, but if she's by herself, she is defenseless. And there's not much you can do as her. So that's my main problem with her. I mean, gameplay wise, you're just going to be following people around and healing them. But I do acknowledge the necessity for her in a game, especially if you're getting whooped, so you can heal up. And she can also help with like anti-spawn camping, because you can throw like a med kit down like outside spawn, so you won't immediately be killed as you walk out. And also she can throw her medkits down on an objective or like a control point or something. So while you're capping it, your team is also getting healed, which might provide extra resistance. So there is some utility in that as well, aside from just basically healing. So that's all there is to her. She's pretty weak weapons, good healing, so not much you can do in a one-on-one scenario, or many scenarios. Right, so coming at the very bottom of A tier is Von Graff, the medic for the Axis. In terms of healing, he is the exact same as Camille, so there's nothing to really cover about that. And the reason why he is slightly higher than her is because of his gun. He is the Sturmgewehr, or the STG-44. In this game, I think it's called the MP-44. That's the assault rifle that he has. It does good damage. It has high capacity, high fire rate. So all in all, it's a very good weapon, and also you can heal people. So you're not nearly as defensive as you were with Camille. Aside from that, there's nothing else really to say. You can heal people, and all the things that I said previously, you can put it on control points and stuff to be able to stay on the control points a little bit longer. So, I mean, that's all there is to be said about him. So next up is the Compsognathus. Now, if you'd asked me earlier, I would have probably put the Compy a lot lower, but upon playing him more, he has earned his rightful spot in A tier. So, what can you do? So, his main merits are the fact that he's extremely small and fast and nimble. He can move around the map and go in certain places that other characters can't. He can hide behind certain objects that you wouldn't expect. So he essentially can sneak around and kill people. His general style of play is to hide behind boxes and shadows and stuff, and carefully maneuver around the map, and then striking at the right time to get a kill. And your ability is, at any point, you can alt fire and you'll explode because you have like a grenade attached to you. That's his main thing. He can suicide bomb people. But this is really only useful until you get 3 kills, because once you get 3 kills, your grenade charges up or something, and it becomes a lot more powerful, allowing your explosion to be bigger and cause more damage. So generally the style of play here is to get 3 kills and then explode on a large group of people, which, as I've said before, is very common to find. Typically, dinosaurs who benefit from attacking lone enemies, such as Dilophosaurus, that's not particularly useful in this game because people are so typically grouped up, and so you'd have to find a rare opportunity. But with the Combi, it's not as useless because you can move around the map and pick and choose your targets because they won't see you. So that is why he is higher, even though he typically has to go after individuals. And then after that, only getting 3 kills, which is not that very hard to do at all, you get your big explosion. So typically, if you do well, you can probably get around 5 kills, 6 kills per life. 3 kills maybe from your melee, and another 2 or 3 kills from your explosion, or 4 kills from your melee and another 2, or however much. So generally speaking, you can get a lot of kills, and you can just run around. You're not particularly good for collecting objectives, so too many of this dinosaur is bad. So you have to balance it out. However, certainly a great asset for the team. Right. So rounding up A tier, we have the Velociraptor. So the Velociraptor, or Raptor in this game for short. Let's just call it the Raptor. Let's break it down. So what can he do? Well, he's extremely fast and extremely mobile. So you can get to the front lines of, or the point of conflict on the map extremely quickly. If you hold crouch and space at the same time, you can do a leap, which is like I think it's like around twice the normal jump that you achieve when you just press spacebar. So this is mainly useful for his ability. While you're in the air and descending upon an enemy, if you press, I'm not sure if it's press or hold right click because either work, even though the game description does say hold. But anyways, if you alt fire while you're descending upon an enemy, you will like begin eviscerating them, and you'll go through an animation where you insta kill them. This is extremely useful because you just end someone's life incredibly quickly, and that's really his only ability. He has a claw attack as well. It's not too strong, surprisingly enough, but there's that. So he's at the top of A tier, and that's because of his insta kill. So, but is there any problems with him? Most certainly, there's an abundance of problems with him. Unlike the Compy, where he can move around sneakily and pick his targets, Velociraptor cannot do this as well because he's bigger. So if it's a big open map and there's snipers, there's very little you can do. Also, his leap attack, also useless if they're in groups, which happens a lot. So, what is the general style of play for him? Well, obviously you need to avoid large groups of people because they can kill you while you're in the animation. So you want to find very small groups or just individuals and pick your targets carefully. What else? The reason why I put him so highly, even though this is such a huge caveat and it was such a big problem for the Dilophosaurus, is because firstly he's a lot more nimble and mobile than the Dilophosaurus, and his kills are a lot more reliable because he's in first person as well. Additionally, with the Velociraptor or the Raptor, he has a much greater skill ceiling in my eyes than the Dilophosaurus. There's a lot more that you can achieve, and I imagine there's a lot of crazy stuff that you can do with the Raptor. So there's that merit as well. Aside from that, he's just a good generalist class to have, and I suppose that's it. Very high skill ceiling. You could achieve a lot if you know what you're doing. You'll notice if you're a Raptor main, you could have some bad games and you're gonna have some good games. It all just kind of depends on how the game goes down and how everything falls into place. So the leaping mechanics as well, they're very finicky sometimes, and it's very uncomfortable for it being the crouch or the control key. So it's like shifting between holding shift for sprint and then control. It's very awkward, and sometimes the leap will just refuse to register. So there are some inconsistencies with them, but if you can get past that and with enough time and devotion into him, I feel like you can make some sick plays that really shift or turn the tides of the game. So that's the Velociraptor. Right, so rounding off A tier and going into S tier, we have the T-Rex. T-Rex has the potential to be massively oppressive in certain maps. Well, he's only available on certain maps, on a certain game mode. But if you know what you're doing, you could be self-sustaining and just constantly be applying pressure to the enemy team and giving them very little opportunity to come back. So what can he do? Well, firstly, he has two MG42s attached to the side of his head, which you can fire, and is very hard hitting and can kill almost every class or enemy in a matter of seconds. He can press E and he will roar, and this anyone in his vicinity in front of him will get knocked over, and at that point they're very obviously, as you would imagine, when they're knocked over, they are very defenseless, and you can take advantage of this by either eating them with alt fire or just shooting them. But if you've already gotten up to the point where they're on the ground, you might as well just eat them. So if you eat any ally, you gain like around 2000 HP back. So this is what I meant by it being self-sustaining, because you can just be at their spawn and knock them over and eat them and be extremely oppressive and give them very little opportunity to fight back. Now, there are some means of them being able to attack you, snipers or Nigel's rocket launcher. They do good damage. And there is one glaring weakness to the T-Rex, and that is his size. There's only certain parts of the map that you can access, as you'd imagine, and if the allies are cooped up in buildings, you can't get to them, obviously, but they have little windows or something and they can shoot you. What else? You're very slow, obviously, so getting around the map is a very arduous process. One of the classes that we'll be discussing later has an ability that can wipe you out in a matter of seconds, so there's also that. All in all, not too high of a skill ceiling because there's only so much you can do as a T-Rex and you're only alive for... It's on a rotation sort of deal, so it's not like you can master him, and he's not supposed to be mastered, he's supposed to be a fun dinosaur to play as. And unlike the Styracosaurus, he is actually fun and good to control. He feels good, and I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say. You can regenerate health, and I don't believe he can be healed by conventional means, so I don't think medics are particularly good for him. Yeah, and that's it. That's I believe all there is to say about him. Next up we have Ilona. Now, Ilona is a human, firstly, and, well, what can she do? So, she has a sniper rifle, a Mosin Nagant, which can do very high damage. I mean, a body shot practically wipes out almost all the HP, and a headshot is an insta-kill. And that goes for the same with the Axis sniper. So, like Team Fortress 2, it heavily rewards headshots, but less so in this game. What else? So she has a revolver as her secondary, and she has Jackrabbits, which is a unique throwable. What this does is that once you throw it, all the small carnivores that get near enough will be like forcefully dragged to it, like uncontrollably dragged towards it, and then they'll be stuck in an animation where they're eating the rabbit. This is, if you can pull this off, it is extremely useful because that raptor or other small carnivore is effectively dead. And since they're stuck in the animation, you can get a very clean headshot. Is there any weaknesses? Of course. Up close, she's, as you'd imagine from a sniper, unless you can quickscope or something, she's not very good up close. So it's best to be away from the front lines, safe in some building or something, just taking pot shots. Also, of course, it's not always guaranteed to work. The entire team of the Axis could just be humans or herbivores, so then the Jackrabbit's completely useless. Also, you have to be fairly close to a Jackrabbit for it to kick in, so there's also that to consider. However, even still, without her Jackrabbit, she's still a very effective sniper that can take out almost everything very quickly. All humans die in one headshots, and all the more tankier dinosaurs only take like 2 headshots, and since they're tankier, they're slower. This, of course, is the exception for the T-Rex and Styracosaurus, but that's besides the point. So, all in all, an extremely useful asset to the team, but like the Compi, too many probably isn't a good idea. Because you need some objective players. So, all in all, extremely good class, can wipe out almost everything in this game and dispatch them extremely quickly. Has a very high skill ceiling, as you'd imagine, because it's the foundation of her is aim, so of course you can always improve, and yeah, I believe that's it. Right, so following just above Ilona is the Axis sniper Hisman. They're almost the exact same, so there really isn't a difference. However, I believe that his unique power or special, his unique special is just a tinge bit better than Ilona's. So, firstly, let's break it down. So, he has a scoped Kar98K. I do believe it does the same damage as the Kar98 that Striker has. Obviously, it has the same damage as Nose and Nagant. Wipes out almost all the HP on a body shot, instant kill on headshot. However, it doesn't have the problem of the iron sights because it is scoped. He has I think it's a Luger as his secondary. He has the same secondary as all the others, which, if you have a fast enough trigger finger, you can unload the entire magazine and almost instantly, which is kind of broken. What else? Right, so his ability. His E ability is he can call in like a suicide pterosaur to fly in, and this is, at least in my eyes, more useful than the Jackrabbit, and it's very similar to Joe Spencer's artillery. But the only difference is the delay isn't nearly as long as Joe Spencer, so you actually have a decent chance of getting a kill with the pterosaur. You could put it onto a control point in advance so that when the allies do, or when your enemies do actually get on the control point, the pterosaur swoops in and wipes out at least a large number of them. Also, if you are nearby, like for example if you're in a close quarter combat situation, it is more useful than a jackrabbit because the pterosaur can also be locked onto an enemy, so even if you die, you could still secure the kill afterwards, so it's pretty much just a trade then. It's an equal trade. Aside from that, it's practically the exact same for Milona, just everything that I said about her is applicable to here except for the jackrabbit. So the pterosaur is slightly better, or better in my opinion, than the jackrabbits. Has more utility because it applies to all the classes, and I believe that's it. So, oh, and also he doesn't have to sacrifice a grenade for his special, because his special is an E ability, but he still has steel hand grenades or stick grenades, so there's also that. So that's why in my eyes he's just a tinge better. Alright, and for what I believe to be the single best Axis class is, well, it's no surprise, it's the Microraptor. Now, the Microraptor, well, what can you do? So the Microraptor is extremely small, like the Compy, but a little bit bigger, but still extremely hard to hit. He's very fast and mobile, and he's in first person. He has a very high jump, and he can stay in the air for a prolonged amount of time because he has wings, so like I guess that propels him. It's kind of like the scout jump from TF2, but like even more so. I mean, that's actually quite useful while you're flapping around in the air, making yourself very hard to hit while you are landing hits with his ult fire, which is like a poison spit, and this actually does a very decent amount of damage. I think it takes around like a third or half health off the human, which is very good. The only issue is that it can be sometimes troubling to be able to hit because there's like a certain trajectory to it. It's not hit scan, so you have to be able to predict where the enemy will be going and so forth, especially at longer distances. But with enough practice, you can certainly consistently hit your poison spits. What else? He can cling to walls. If you hold crouch, you can cling to walls. This isn't as useful as the other abilities, but you can cling to a wall in a sneaky spot and just get some poison spit pot shots, which then also can be good for your team. And I believe that's it. That's all his abilities. So he's a very much of a jack of all trades because he has a multitude of abilities, but he specializes in just running around and killing people with haste. You're very hard to hit unless they have a Nigel with a flamethrower, but that's not too common. So generally the style of play is to fly around, make yourself a hard to hit target, spit in the face. Oh yes, I forgot. You can also, if you spit into the enemy's face, they will be blinded, or at least their screen will be filled up and they can't see very well at all. So you generally also want to hit the face. So the general style of play is you can either sneak up behind people, spit them, and like only have to claw them twice and they'll be down very quickly, or you can spit in their face right in front of them and fly around, making yourself a hard to hit target and end them very quickly. Either way, extremely useful. Microraptors, they're very hard to hit, they're very annoying, they do a lot of damage, and very high potential for a high skill ceiling because those poison spit shots. Also with the flapping around, if the enemy's high up or something, you can flap up and shoot them with your poison spit, and you can kill people with 2 poison spits, so you don't even have to be near them technically. So all in all, very, very good. Hard to hit from snipers. The only real counter is Nigel, but he's at B tier and he's not, I wouldn't imagine he would be used at like too much. So all in all, very high potential, very good damage output, good for capping points because he's so small, and yeah, good damage all around. Just a great class. Alright, and for the best, at least in my opinion, class in the game is Hardgrave. Hardgrave is an ally, and well, let's break it down. What does he have? He has an M1 Garand. This is an extremely good rifle, extremely good gun. It does great damage. It has 8 rounds. You cannot reload halfway because it is clip fed, so you have to wait for the ding. Obviously, it's an iconic World War II firearm, so it does great damage. You can very quickly get kills. The iron sights are pretty good in this game and not too fat. Just all in all, an extremely good battle rifle that does great damage, and you can wipe out everything very quickly. He has a Colt M1911, just like Joe Spencer. Pretty good secondary. And he has normal pineapple grenades. So that's cool and all. So Yeah, he does have he does have a great battle rifle, but what makes him just such a cut above everything else? Well, I mean, I'd say the Microraptor is probably around the same level, but what makes him just so much better than all the other allies? Well, it is because of his ability, his berserk ability. Once you get 3 kills, you charge it up, just like the Compi. You charge it up, and once you press E, you get into this kind of rage, the saturation goes up, and you can only use your fists, but your fists do extremely good damage, and you can one-shot everything, and your health or your resistance is increased drastically. So if this is used at the right time, you could potentially wipe out an entire team in a matter of seconds. Earlier when we were discussing about T-Rex, I was referring to Hardgrave because within a matter of seconds, if you manage to run up to the T-Rex without him noticing, you can just punch him and he'll be down in like 10 seconds. So his ability is so incredibly strong, and pair that with the battle rifle, making it extremely consistent to be able to get kills. So you can get your 3 kills very consistently and go on a rampage, just absolutely let loose. So all in all, he's extremely good. There's not too much to master because you don't need extremely good aim with the M1 Garand to be able to get kills. Although, I mean, it does help for those tiny ones like the Compi and the Microraptor, you know, being able to shoot them very quickly, especially the Microraptor while he's in the air, like I was saying earlier. If you can hit your shots, you're practically unstoppable almost. So that is why, in my opinion, he's the single best class in the game. Alright, and that about wraps it up for this video. If you have any questions, qualms, or queries, be sure to leave in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and this is me signing off.
Your son's me, but he'll come. What? Do not come ever.
Or else you'll do what?
If you try to come, this becomes a much simpler matter. I will fuck your brother-in-law. What did you say?